Avoid proprietary blends like the plague. Some of those things are on Amazon, and 80% of them don't meet label claim. 20 to 30% have no active at all. 20% are counterfeit. A fair amount of them have heavy metals and bacteria. Caffeine itself is actually fairly toxic. Caffeine is the dirty precursor to paraxanthine. Paraxanthine is actually the thing you want. I was on these message boards as a no one, like there was post number 1, and there's thousands of posts, and then years later I'm getting an award from this company, getting acknowledged for how incredible this supplement is, and it was the best in class. I'm very proud of Paraxanthine. I brought this to the world and was involved in both formulations, and it's exciting times right now. This is real. Like, what I did is now in the world and people are consuming it.
Shawn, welcome to the Backtracks podcast. For those of you listening to this podcast, Shawn here is legitimately probably the guy when it comes to formulations and dietitian creating things that you put in your body for your health. So he's formulated over 1,200 different products. He has 125 different patents. Dude is a best-selling author. And so today we get to speak to probably the most renowned, or at least well-informed guy, credible guy in the industry when it comes to making supplements that make you feel better, look better, operate better, think better. Shawn, it sounds like you formulated a product called Update, or an ingredient within Update. And this week you're rolling out across all Walmarts in the US. And you've just done a partnership with Kim Kardashian. What's that like? What's going through your head right now?
I mean, she's one of the top 5, probably most noteworthy human beings when it comes to the zeitgeist. Something akin to a Michael Jackson when I was young. Like, everyone knows across the planet who Kim Kardashian is, whether you love her or not.
Right.
Clearly, she's and the whole family are powerful business people. She's really only representing this and Skims. So,
wow.
As much as you might think her name is out there and she might represent 100 different things, she doesn't. She is very passionate about Update, drinks them several times a day. That's how we really engaged with her, because they were on the show Keeping Up with the Kardashians. She was seen at Jeff Bezos' wedding with it. She's seen in paparazzi shots with it. She was passionate about it, used it, loved it. And I think that's the most important thing. If someone's going to represent a brand, I don't like the idea of someone that's just paid to represent and kind of shill to their community. That never goes very far. It really has to be truly organic and felt and believed. And she loves it. She drinks several a day. So that's been exciting. And she wanted to come on board not only to be an investor, have equity, be a part of it, but also to affect branding. So it got rebranded, reflavored, repackaged, new logos. Like, it'll have a whole new look. It's launching as of this recording this weekend. And it'll be at all Walmarts, all 4,200 stores in the U.S., and launching in many other stores throughout the year. But it's blowing up. Just received $20 million in investment. So it's just gasoline on the fire right now. And it's a very experiential ingredient and experiential drink. It's also the ingredient that's in Life Cider X, which you've had already. We have here. But I'm very proud of Paraxanthine. I brought this to the world and was involved in both formulations, and it's exciting times right now.
Yeah, it's very exciting times for you. So this ingredient, the key ingredient in Update, and then also this drink here, Life Cider X, is Paraxanthine, which is a metabolite of caffeine, correct?
Correct.
Walk me through what Paraxanthine is, how you created it. What was because obviously you didn't start with 20 million invested and the Kim Kardashian signing and rolling out across Walmarts. Obviously there's been a process to get here. So what was it like creating Paraxanthine, discovering it, and building it up to what it is now?
I've always had trouble metabolizing caffeine. Like, I feel like it frustrated me how much people loved caffeine. And for me, it was such a dirty feeling. It would impair my sleep. It would make me anxious, give me arrhythmias, brain fog. and would last in my system for the rest of the day, maybe even the next day, having like this hungover type feeling.
Yeah.
60% of the population are slow metabolizers of caffeine. I thought I was kind of alone in this, but it comes to be that the majority of us don't metabolize caffeine very well. It has to do with the CYP1A2 gene and the cytochrome P450 pathway and how you metabolize caffeine. Caffeine itself is actually fairly toxic. It's in plants to repel insects.
Yes.
And it's really, even though we talk about paraxanthine as the metabolite of caffeine, it's really more like caffeine is the dirty precursor to paraxanthine. Paraxanthine is actually the thing you want. When you're a slow metabolizer, you're kind of stuck with the toxic and it's kind of drip dropping slowly to this thing you want. And so you never really experience truly paraxanthine, but you're kind of stuck feeling the caffeine. There's also other metabolites that are kind of dirty, like theophylline. And so you're bypassing all of this when you just give paraxanthine. And it is a clean, nootropic, neuroprotective experience that is completely unlike caffeine. All of our studies have shown this, that like when we put them head to head, there was a study where we did a 10K race with athletes and we did a multitasking kind of focus test, like before and after the race. When we gave caffeine, they had an increase in errors post-race of 23% of mental errors. And, you know, you might think, oh, that's expected. They're exhausted.
Yeah.
The placebo was around 4%. So
wow.
Caffeine was markedly higher in mental errors. I like to call that the frazzle that we've come to expect with the central nervous system stimulant.
It's like anxiety overwhelm.
Exactly. Like there's more energy, but it's kind of a frantic energy, right? And with paraxanthine, we saw an 11% decrease in mental errors. So the delta or the difference, as we would say, huge difference. So we're actually improving after the fatigue of the race mental errors because of paraxanthine. And what we've seen in the data is that actually the more exhausted or pushed you are, like even elderly models, when we've looked at mice and rats, like kind of the more extreme the circumstance, the more paraxanthine shows up differently than caffeine.
Like alert, clarity. And
it's not even just like the adenosine inhibition is what we talk about, like with the wakefulness that caffeine is known for, and certainly paraxanthine. But what we see with paraxanthine that we don't see with caffeine, we see increased nitric oxide via PDE9 inhibition. I know this might get a little technical, but just trust me. So nitric oxide, meaning blood flow to the brain. We see increased BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which means neuroplasticity, which means protecting your brain cells, neurons, and helping create new neurons, neurogenesis. Also increased serotonin, dopamine, and acetylcholine. So serotonin, think the feel good. Dopamine, gets shit done. Acetylcholine, deep focused work. And then we see increased glutathione and catalase, which is like the master antioxidant. And decreased oxidative stress as a result. We see decreased beta amyloid plaque, which is associated with Alzheimer's, and dopamine, by the way, is associated with Parkinson's. So like a lot of what we would consider neurodegenerative across the board, like less neuroplasticity, less blood flow, less antioxidants, less of these neurotransmitters, more beta amyloid plaque. All of these are the way the brain ages, and you are neurodegenerative. And really, paraxanthine's reversing all of those. So this is really, truly profound when it comes to brain health.
And so you're seeing like direct, quantifiable, qualitative and quantitative improvement on the brain and brain health, thinking, clarity, rationality using paraxanthine in direct studies against placebo and caffeine.
Absolutely. And it's just, we've looked at e-gaming studies, like where there's normally what's called a habituation or physical dependency upon like caffeine. We don't see that with paraxanthine. We don't see the adaptation effect that we see with caffeine, like where it keeps taking more and more and more to do the same thing. I mean, I think back to like when I was a kid, like a Coca-Cola, like 60 milligrams was a big deal. Now you have like bang, 300 milligrams, quad espresso, it's like
Yep.
600 milligrams. And, you have pre-workouts, 400 milligrams and a bunch of other stims. I mean, it's insane where it's gotten because it just keeps taking more and more and more. And what we see with paraxanthine is there is not the habituation. There is not the adaptation. It works the same way every single time. Matter of fact, in the e-gaming study, we saw a time effect, meaning like in the study, as you continued to use it, it actually got, instead of like caffeine getting worse and worse and worse,
where it's less
we
impactful,
actually
less
saw
impactful.
better, and better with continued use because the brain was actually getting healthier.
So it's like adaptive in the way of paraxanthine. And the way I look at this, because the chemical compounds fly right over my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that I'm understanding this is like crude oil turns into gasoline. You don't want to put crude oil in your car because it would just gunk everything up. It would get everything dirty and it would pretty much shut down the car. But gasoline runs fine, and the cleaner the gasoline, the cleaner the car runs. You have like the ethanol for race cars, and so you just get cleaner and cleaner fuel. But it all is essentially distilled out of one thing, which is crude oil. And so my understanding is paraxanthine similar, where it's like a very, very clean variation of caffeine, where the car runs smoother. In fact, it might even clean up the engine instead of making it dirty. And so, of course, it would run better over time because the brain is, to your point, like you're getting cleaner. But it's interesting that it's adaptive instead of maladaptive in the way that you actually allow yourself to, like, instead of, I'll drink caffeine most days, and I like to drink a lot of caffeine. I'm not intimidated by caffeine for any means, like 400 or 500 milligrams. Like, boo-hoo, I'm 25 years old. I got to get some stuff done. And it does, like, I feel it over time. Like, A, the caffeine gets less impactful. B, especially if I drink it right when I wake up, I can feel, like, the crash. It sucks. And then you can get that caffeine dependency where, like, you go caffeine for 6 days in a row, you get a headache if you don't do caffeine on the 7th. And you're saying paraxanthine A, every day that you take it, you actually notice the impacts are more and more beneficial, so they stack. I'm curious what it's like if you drink it first thing in the morning, because I know Huberman is like, no caffeine for the first 90 minutes of your day. So I'm curious if I can drink paraxanthine first thing in the morning, and then also if I stop taking paraxanthine on the 7th day, do I still get the headache?
First, on the Huberman idea, like, I do feel like there is rationale to not being psychologically dependent on a stimulant and knowing what your baseline is, irrespective of what that stimulant is. I do like that idea of knowing who Shawn is, who Harrison is, like, who is this human being without alteration? I feel like that actually is important. And as a scientist, you want to know a baseline so that you can assess, like, the difference or the delta, as we were talking about, between the baseline and this intervention. So knowing that baseline, I feel is powerful. Knowing who you actually are, I think that's powerful. I think that's actually good advice. And then to consciously make a decision to say, I would like to have this alteration now. I am choosing that rather than it becoming habitual.
Yeah, it's like, I notice it the most with food. I'm a huge proponent of fasting in my personal life. And I notice a lot of people when they're fasting, like, oh, I get really bitchy when I'm hungry. And like when I'm without food, who am I really like? Am I the same type of person? Am I focused? Am I less focused? All these things, like, where am I at when I don't have the things that make me comfortable? And maybe that's like this raw version of myself, but then it's like, okay, well, I know when I do have food, I'm a little bit more chatty and maybe I'm a little bit more relaxed. And so do I want that? Or I know when I have caffeine, I'm just turning up the volume on my energy and my willingness to just go for the throat on things. And so it's like, okay, today, I know that I have a big day. I know that I need to be super punchy, super alert, super focused. Caffeine sounds like a great alteration to who I am. But if I take away the caffeine and I haven't eaten in 6 hours, all I've done is drank water and exist. Am I a horrible person to be around? I would hope not. And then it's like, well, let me measure off of some kind of base.
Yeah, it depends what you're basing your value off of. If your value is purely off of your productivity and not even maybe ideal productivity, but just being busy, then your frazzled self might seem ideal. but I think you need to question the idea of you being tired, maybe because you're physically in need of sleep.
Yeah.
And while that's okay to bypass that on occasion, continually bypassing that is not healthy. When I travel to all these other countries, I was just in China last week, they sleep during lunch. They put their heads down, like the lights are off. Some of them have like these cots that they have in the office. They sleep for like an hour or two.
Yeah, the siesta.
Exactly.
Right?
It's the same idea. And like this is normal in the rest of the world. And you know, in the US you would be fired for doing that. Like it'd be so egregious. But you have to question, like, we're the only species that forgoes sleep intentionally. Like, why do we do this? Like, we're watching, you know, a basketball game, a football game, the news, like Game of Thrones, you know, whatever it is. Yeah, like we're like, I'm tired and I'm still up and I don't, you know, you're firing blue light at your eyeballs and, you know, whatever it is. Why are you doing that? Like, you need sleep. Like, if you actually do care about your physiology, your physical body, then take care of your physical body.
So I'm 25 years old and I have a terrible sleep pattern. I'll sleep one night for an hour and a half, maybe 3 hours. And then the next night I'll sleep for 12 hours. And I just kind of am in this great toxic cycle. Walk me through, like, because it's like everybody needs 8 hours. And maybe there's some people that are the exception to the rule. But for the most part, sleep 8 hours, dark as possible, quiet as possible, relatively cold are like kind of the baseline understandings that I have. I did not know that humans were the only species that forego sleep consciously, which is interesting. What does, like, do you have a lot of understanding on like sleep debt and like managing sleep debt? Because I just found out that if I sleep 2 hours one night and 12 hours the next night, the difference in sleep doesn't just cancel each other out, because I have to, like, sleep debt accumulates over time and it resets on a circadian rhythm. There's more to it than just sleeping the total hours.
Yeah, there is a net effect to that debt. There is the idea, like, acutely, meaning like short term, of sleep pressure, like where it can be, like, I just came back from China. So it's not ideal that I like take a bunch of naps during the day. It's better that I feel tired during the day, because China's completely upside down, right? So like there's 14 hours difference right now. So when I come back, my desire is to sleep all day and be up all night. And obviously that's not ideal. I'm going to stay up and not nap and then go to sleep at maybe an early bedtime, but somewhere close to bedtime, like 8 p.m.
Right.
And then maybe I sleep in a little bit more. So it's, 7 a.m. or something. And you start kind of closing that, like, over time, so that you're getting on track. That's a sleep hygiene schedule, like where you're holding steadfast to like this window of sleep that you should be acquiring. It is important to actually try and sleep when it's dark out. And when it is dark, you should not be up that much longer. With all of us using like a lot of blue light and, from our devices like laptops, cell phones, TVs, certainly like VR glasses now, or, something like that, that would be the worst possible thing. We're getting a lot of this blue light and it's blocking melatonin's release from the pituitary. And so that is not ideal in you falling asleep. Also, eating too late, and certainly like drinking would be the worst thing. And drinking late in the evening would be bad, but just eating late at night is not ideal. This is like Dr. Sachin Panda's data, like around circadian rhythm, is that you should be eating during the daylight window and you should be getting sleepy when it gets dark out, and you should be falling asleep sometime soon after dark.
Yeah.
And yes, that would mean that in the winter that you would sleep more and eat less, and eat less in terms of the window. Maybe you might eat more calorically. It just depends, maybe on how cold it is and what you're exposed to. But this is something to keep in mind, is that we need to focus on our sleep hygiene, try and get as regular as possible on waking up at the same time. There's the idea of social jet lag, where we stay up 2, 3, 4 hours later on the weekend. And it's literally like traveling to Europe or something if you're an American listening to this, and then coming back. And that jet lag is not ideal. So if you can, one of the best things you could do for your body is to have a consistent schedule, not only during the week, but on the weekends as well, and not impair that circadian rhythm.
It's in a social jet lag of like, okay, my social boundary of like, here's when I cut off my social life, and it's the same as like, here's when the sun sets. And so then I just have my routine. You mentioned like eating late at night, drinking late at night, so I'll just start drinking during the day instead.
Day drinking actually makes a lot more sense. Like,
really?
I drink on occasion, and that is the only time I drink.
So day parties all day.
Day parties, like if I'm at a resort and chilling with my fiance, then I might have a couple drinks by the pool, and it'll be during the day, and then I'll have my water, and then I get great sleep, and it doesn't affect my HRV, and
I kind of love that.
Yeah, day drinking.
Okay, day drinking is 2026. Catch me at 10 a.m. wasted at the pool. It's gonna be great. I try not to drink either. I get terrible hangovers.
Yeah.
But day drinking, I might be okay with that. I could get behind that. Paraxanthine, caffeine. I try not to take caffeine after 2 in the afternoon. I like to actually try to be, because the data I do know about caffeine is caffeine has like an 8-hour half-life. And so it stays in your system a super long time. So 400 milligrams of caffeine, 8 hours later, still 200 milligrams of caffeine in my body, or 8 hours later is 100 milligrams. And so it's still in my body the next day. So I try to cut my caffeine in the afternoon. What's paraxanthine like? I know this is kind of the spotlight formulation or ingredient that you've created recently. It sounds like it's a lot of your focus. Can I drink paraxanthine at 10 p.m. at night? Ill-advised?
Well, backing up to caffeine, so there's a lot of what we call bioindividuality, meaning a lot of biological differences from person to person in the phenotype, meaning how you present. And so with caffeine, actually, the variability based on that CYP1A2 gene, and there's some other genes that play a role in this too, ADORI2A is another one, but there's a 1.5 to 10.5 hour half-life variability from people to people.
Oh my God.
So that's a huge, like a 7x difference.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about. Like how you experience caffeine and how I experience caffeine can be radically different. We sound like we're talking about the same compound, but how we experience it is very different. So you might be one of those people, I can have coffee and go right to bed, like those people, which I actually think is a sign potentially of adrenal fatigue, but that's a different discussion. But the idea that someone like me, I could have that caffeine and 10.5 hours later, to your point, the half-life, I have half as much. If I had 400 milligrams, it'd be 200. 10.5 hours after that, it'd be
100 milligrams.
100. Yeah. 10.5 hours after that, 50.
And
so this is days
Yeah.
later. Days. So this is a huge difference in how we experience caffeine. What we see in paraxanthine is there's not that bioindividuality, that everyone experiences it pretty much the same way. It's about a 3-hour half-life. And so what we've seen is that you could have the 200 or 300, like for example, Life Cider has some nootropics and is about 200 milligrams of paraxanthine and has apple cider vinegar. Update is a little bit stronger, 50% stronger, has 300 milligrams. And a couple of nootropics as well. And so like those doses, you could have those, and people love this for nighttime workouts. I don't actually recommend working out at nighttime. There's bad data on that. Like you should actually be working out in the morning.
So work out in the morning and then get drunk by lunch and then take a nap after you've gotten wasted and then work the rest of the day.
But you could have paraxanthine at 6, 7, 8 o'clock, and you'd be asleep at, whatever it is, 11 p.m.
Okay.
I don't know when.
How little, same thing with caffeine of like, if I think through like the digestive half-lives, if paraxanthine is a 3-hour half-life, and let's say I take 300 milligrams, so 3 hours later, there's 150 milligrams, and then 6 hours after I've taken paraxanthine, 300 milligrams, I'd have 75 left. At what point is it minimal amount or like...
It's different, though, in how you experience it. We don't see the effect on the central nervous system with blood pressure, heart rate, anxiety, and any other marker like that, like we do with caffeine. So
At all?
even though no,
Wow.
so even though there is the stimulation, there's not the. That's why I was talking about caffeine being the frazzle and paraxanthine being the flow. Like they're very different in how they're experienced. So it's not like a direct correlation like that. I can tell you anecdotally that we see people that are doing evening workouts get great sleep. Matter of fact, we actually see improved HRVs with paraxanthine, whereas with caffeine, we see worsened HRVs.
I have so much to learn. You're selling me on the Kool-Aid of only drinking paraxanthine. But I mean, reasonably, if I'm drinking 300 milligrams, 3-hour half-life, like maybe by the time it gets to 75, so like 2 half-lives, which would be 6 hours, it's probably reasonable that I could go to sleep and
Oh, easily. Like I'm telling you, like it doesn't even take that long. Like you can get to sleep in 4 hours of having a drink.
Yeah. We do so we've had Life Cider X in the house for a while, and we did a podcast with the boys at like 9 p.m. at night one time. There's like 4 of us in here all drinking paraxanthine, and it hits like 2 a.m. and all the boys are in the group chat like we should not have drank that so late, and nobody could sleep. But it was, I will say, like the experience is a lot cleaner. It actually feels more potent. It feels a lot more clear. Of like when we first got it, because we're not scientists, we're a bunch of 20-year-old dudes making money on the internet. Like we don't even know what we do, and it's almost intimidating. Like this paraxanthine thing, like I know what caffeine is because I grew up with caffeine, coffee and tea and everything else, matcha, energy drinks, Red Bull, Monster. But then paraxanthine, it's like, am I taking some experimental chemical here? Is this like something made in a lab? Is this we had no idea. And so we're drinking this thing and it's like, wow, this definitely feels a lot more potent and a lot more impactful than caffeine. Like there is a lot more of a 1-to-1 of like, I feel more alert. I feel more focused with paraxanthine than what I would say from caffeine. And also when I started trying it, I was uneducated. And so it felt almost intimidating of like, is this a drug? Like what's happening right now? So it's good to hear that it's a cleaner variation. So you've been doing this for a long time, creating chemical formulations, discovering compounds like this, patenting them, creating different products like Update and Life Cider. But you also started with a health crisis, and you started with, from my understanding, not a lot of success and not a lot of credibility, and a lot of odds actually stacked against you to the point of, teachers insulting you, which creates an inspiration for you to be someone that maybe you didn't even imagine you could be before then.
For sure.
Walk me through that journey of, was it just 100-hour weeks and 7 days a week sleeping in the office for 10 years like Elon would suggest, or what's been the work life?
Yeah, I was totally part of that hustle culture. I was bought into that. I believed in what my dad told me was the world out there, was that I needed to go to college. I needed to, get the degree, focus on business, none of the liberal arts kind of stuff. And then certainly like buying into everything Gary Vee said, and that it's all about the hustle, and that's the only way you're going to win is to outwork everyone. At the time it was people like Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan, and like that was the message that was so reinforced at the time I was coming up. And add to it that I had a difficult childhood, definitely difficult at home, and then bullied at school. And I became morbidly obese, and I was my own worst critic. Severe imposter syndrome, just constantly staying in loops in my head about how I'm just unworthy. And so I just humiliate and shame myself into working as hard as I could possibly do.
Yeah, instead of doing drugs or spiraling more on food, it was just, I will do everything I can to work as hard as I can.
Yeah, and that led to a lot of health issues mentally, physically, spiritually, and really in every way. I was truly in crisis, and I was on a path to suicide for sure. Like either directly from just working myself to death, literally, or indirectly from just being so numb and feeling alone.
Yeah. I do, thank you for sharing. I do know that at least a common trait that I've seen across all the successful people I know is their willingness to focus and do hard things. Of yeah, it's going to suck. And yes, I need to focus a lot, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I do think that there is a certain tolerance for difficulty and hard work that is required to be successful. And also what you just shared of, I was working myself to the bone. I found all my validation and worth in society through my work. And that actually led to self-destruction, and it led to a crisis across your physical health, across other things. I think there's also an argument to be made that you're extremely successful now and you have all these accolades. And so, I think the counter argument is, well, all that hard work is actually what led you to being successful. So like, that's just the price that you got to pay. Would you agree with that? Or would you say, like, did the success would you attribute the success to those years of grind and misery? Or would you say it was a shift in perspective and a shift in thinking that allowed you to actually get where you are now?
Yes, it's really all of it. I mean, there's definitely some degree of saying yes to everything when you're starting out. You're not in a position to say no to many things when you're starting out. You got to be hungry. You got to work hard. You have to outwork the others, because passion isn't enough. Like, passion's part of it, but hard work is another part of it. But at some point, the grind, I mean, think about, like, hustle, yes. Like, there's times when you have to hustle, when you have to go get it. It's getting into sympathetic nervous system. And then there's parasympathetic, which is, rest and digest, and, the flow, right? Which is kind of like a combination of the two, when you're stimulated and relaxed. Like, that's being in flow. Like, hustle and flow, cool. Hustle and grind, where it's like sympathetic, ultra sympathetic, where I'm going to, like, work hard and then work even harder, where I'm adding the misery and the shame, and the pieces are smoking and breaking down and falling apart. That part doesn't serve. So there's a degree to hustle, sure, but it's to get to the flow. If your hustle is for hustle's sake, then that's counterproductive. So at some point, you learn what it is you love along the way, who it is you are, through the idea in science, we call it hormesis, of just like the difficult challenge creates the adaptation.
That's hormesis?
Yeah, that's the idea, like the hormetic effect, yeah.
Okay, so like encountering and overcoming a challenge is what will actually create the behavior, the character, or the skill required to overcome the challenge.
Like unease is going to, like, having more unease in your life will create more ease ultimately, because you're adapting. Like, you become at ease with unease. It becomes easier for you to be in these difficult situations than everyone else.
Right.
But if you're chronically in unease and there isn't periods of ease, that's dis-ease. Like, that will be how that manifests. There needs to be, like, the yin and yang. There needs to be some balance. There needs to be the sympathetic and parasympathetic, that stimulation and relaxation. There needs to be those counterbalances. And if you're just all hypervigilance and sympathetic nervous system, that's going to lead to a breakdown.
Yeah, I think that the Alex Hormozi, has the argument of, like, successful people forgot the behaviors that made them successful. Therefore, they just are like, oh yeah, just do this 5-hour morning routine and you'll be successful. And it's like, dude, you worked 20 hours a day for 7 years. And that's what got you there. And then I think the other side, which what you're saying of, like, you have to have this flow state and it has to feel gentle. And it's like, really striking when opportunity arises, but not needing to just always be busy. This type of mentality, it's hard to find, especially in people that want to be productive. Because I think this message of, you want to be productive, you want to change your life, you want to be successful, just work harder. I think it's a really easy message to resonate with, that I'm not doing enough, I'm not where I want to be, I don't have enough money, I'm not in the shape that I want, I just need to try harder, I need to work harder. And it leads to, like, this over-exhaustive, if I'm not doing something, I'm failing mentality. Versus, I think the kind of the mentality that you're describing, and I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, is be willing to be, like, rest and be willing to do nothing. And then when opportunity arises for you to do something, have the willingness and the capability to do it well and to work hard and to follow through.
I want to be a pro athlete. Cool. Start getting athletic, start working on those things. I want to be a football player, pro football player. Okay, cool. Try out all the positions. You got to say yes to everything. You know, you're on defense, on offense, quarterback, wide receiver, all these different positions. You're going to be good at some things, not as good at others. You're going to figure it out. That was exhausting. I didn't get joy out of that. That one, I feel like I had like a unique spark there. There's something to fan the flame of. Okay, so now I'm like, okay, wide receiver. I could be really good at wide receiver. Okay, let's like dive into that. Now I'm going to specialize. I'm going to do all my training on that. And it would be a waste of my energy to train at all positions once I know I'm a wide receiver, or to train at a different sport. I'm specializing, I'm niching down because I understand where my skills lie and what lights me up. Like where I'm uniquely talented, and this gives me joy, this gives me energy. And so I'm going to niche down and focus there. And now my focus is, there's a lot more ease there because I know what I want to do.
So I'm going to start generally wide, and I'll work out, I'll get in shape, and then I'll try sumo wrestling, and I'll try football, and I'll try baseball, and I go, wait a second, football is where the opportunity, the lifestyle, like what I really want is football. So I'm not going to keep training sumo wrestling, and if I do, it probably would actually be damaging to my football training. That's really great. I do like that. And that is also like one of my favorite quotes at the moment is Ralph Waldo Emerson: "The universe makes way for the man who knows where he is going." Similar to like, no wind is favorable to the ship with no destination, and a million other ones. And you know, I'm kind of balancing this philosophy, talking about the boat metaphor. There's like and ships are most safe in harbor, but it's not what they're built for. So like, you need to be out on the ocean, and also you need to know where you're going. And so kind of where I'm at right now in my life is realizing that the general philosophy is get out of the harbor. Like, just launch the boat, get into figure out how to sail. Like, just get out there, make sure the boat doesn't sink, make sure you have the right crew on the boat, make sure you can sail the boat, and then set a destination and figure out how to get there. But I think it can be overwhelming of like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just work harder? Am I supposed to do 75 hard while also working 16 hours a day? And now I don't have any sleep, and I'm trying to party on the weekends, versus to your example of the football. It's like, well, I know that going out on the weekends is training for sumo wrestling, when what I really want is football, which is my business. Or I know I want to create content, or I want to study this certain thing. So let me actually index over here instead of going out on the weekends or trying to do 75 hard while building a business.
So one of the most important pieces that I learned along the way of yes to that hustle, but there's a shift in mindset that most successful people have. It's the ability to, one, reframe, to say the universe is always working on my behalf, right? But two, to be the curious explorer. Instead of thinking of things as failure, because anyone who's trying is failing. The most successful people fail the most. There's, I don't know, quotes from Michael Jordan and people like that about I miss more than I make, and you know, all these kinds of things, right? Certainly with baseball, that's the case. And I think Ted Williams had a quote about that as well, like, you know, where he was a 400 hitter, which is the greatest in history, but that meant he failed 6 out of 10 times, right? The majority of the time.
Right.
So being a curious explorer means, isn't that interesting? And having that approach to life of taking it all in as data. And even though we might talk about love or passion or some of these ideas being the most important aspects to living a life worth living, what precedes love or passion? You have to be curious about it first. So I like to think about like a curiosity index of, and I'm working on a book on this very idea, of being the ultimate measure for a life worth living. Because preceding that love, I want to get to know you. I want to get to explore this football or, internet marketing or whatever it is. That's the only way I can get passionate about something. The only way I can fall in love with something is to be curious about it. But also, it removes the idea of shame, of failure, of all of these negative, low vibration aspects of life when I'm just curious. And when things come in, you just always say, isn't that interesting? And it's data. And like Edison said, when they were telling him, oh, you failed all these times over and over and over and over. He's like, no, now I know what it's not.
Yeah, 10,000 iterations to find the one that works. Yeah, and like the Edison, now I know what it's not. Like, how much more informed are you on what works when you know what doesn't?
That's what, like, the difference between, like, you know, kind of the early on in the career that we were talking about versus maybe like where I'm at right now, where I can kind of lay back and manifest, and things are just kind of coming in, opportunities are coming in. I could say no to things more. That's the difference in the position, is that I've learned along the way of now I know what it's not. And it took me 10,000 iterations to figure out who it is that I am and what it is that I want and how to go get it.
I think that knowing who you are and what you want and how to go get it is certainty to a degree, right? And something that I found effective in my life, and with internet marketing, content creation, personal brands specifically, especially paid ads, the more direct and certain you are about something and the more specific you are about something, generally the better outcome in convincing someone else of it or bringing someone on board or even just bringing it into your world. It's like, if you really know specifically what you want, like, I want this car in this color with these seats and this trim at this horsepower, whatever, you're going to be able to find it, versus I just think I want a Lamborghini. It's like, well, okay, great. You have 1,000,001 to choose from. Which one are you going to get? And then you don't know. And you don't know, is it going to cost me 100,000 or 1,000,000 or 5,000,000 or 10,000,000? And so then you create this like too big of a range, kind of like digesting caffeine, where you just don't know if it takes an hour and a half or 10.5 hours. And so that specificity and that certainty, I think, is what comes along when you want to just pull something into your life. When it's like, I know what I want, this is what I want, let me get it. But the curiosity, I think that curiosity and the willingness to experience new things, or almost that restfulness of like, let me just be curious, let me observe, let me just experience things. That's where you open up new understandings. That's where you unlock new doors. That's where things that you like could never have expected to happen. And so I think, at least in my life, you know, I'm figuring things out, and I've been able to build a successful marketing business, and very grateful for that. But there's like, I realized along the way, I lost my curiosity. And it was my favorite part about life. Was last night we went to a dinner, and one of the guys was like, hey, we're going to dinner in 10 minutes. Do you want to come? I don't know who's going to be at this dinner. I don't know what this dinner is going to be like. Turns out it is the best time I've ever had. And it's a bunch of really awesome people, and we have a bunch of really amazing conversations. It's incredible food, some of the best steak I've ever eaten. And I'm like, all of this came from no expectations and just curiosity of what happens if I say yes. And tying that into the like overworked, nervous system's exhausted, grind mentality of like, oh, I just have to do this thing because someone's told me to, you're probably going to hate it. Versus, oh, this sounds interesting. Yeah, why not? Like, opportunity has risen. I have the energy. I'm willing to go do the thing. Let me just choose it. And I'm working on balancing these two different perspectives in life of, there's a time for specificity and certainty of when I'm hiring, when I'm creating results for clients, when I'm trying to make something happen in the world or create something physical. I get to be direct and specific, and I get to be extremely certain about what it is and what it isn't. This is what it is. This is what it isn't. And when it comes to experience of life, joy, fulfillment, significance, meaning, maybe I don't need a plan. Maybe I don't need to date with a checklist of what's your body count and what weight are you and all these different things. What are you looking for? What's your timeline? Maybe let me just experience you as an individual and be curious. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, which has been fun to be.
The serendipitous really only comes in when you have white space to allow it to come in.
Amen. And that's like I think that's where like the hustle culture, the grind culture message doesn't apply. Is like, when your back is against the wall, it's like, hey, we have 50 grand in team payroll due in a week, and we're not going to find the money unless we do something new. Maybe working more is not the solution. Maybe I need to sit back and go, all right, bro, like, give me something radically different than what I'm doing right now, because what I'm doing right now isn't working.
Exactly. Dead on.
Yeah. That's I like that serendipity only comes with white space, or the willingness to experience it, openness. And so it's like, if things aren't working, try being more curious. If things are working, double down on the certainty. It's like, we can go both ways here. Maybe life is a spectrum, a game to be played. So overall, like, you're at this very interesting intersection of like mental health and perspective on life of, hey, let's actually enjoy our lives and not just work ourselves to the bone, but let's also be successful and have an awesome life, is my experience of you so far. And standing at that intersection with, I create supplements and chemicals that alter the body state to arguably do these things. Like, and I'd love to talk to you about peptides. We've got Paraxanthine. We've got 1,200 different formulations that you've created, 125 different patents. And all these things are mind-altering, body-altering things, chemical compounds that change my ability to play this game. Right now in society, I think we have an abundance of things we can do to change the game, like physical alterations. Like, I could get different colored eyes if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. I could get huge gauges in my ear. I could change the color of my skin. Who knows? This is kind of your world of expertise. Should I be taking Trenbolone to get in shape, or peptides, or just Paraxanthine? Where are you stacking chemicals, supplements, formulations, drinks, food to most optimize for clarity, lifestyle, livability, and obviously results?
I mean, supplements truly are supplemental, and I do believe that, even as someone who is a champion for supplements, is that you should be hydrating, sleeping, surrounding yourself with positive people, removing toxicity from your life, like taking these supplements, but living in a moldy environment where there's toxic people in your house, toxic people at your job. That's going to be counterproductive. There's no way that these supplements are really going to be making a huge difference. So you have to start with the life you're living. You have to start with your own physiology and your spiritual and mental. But certainly there's ingredients like Paraxanthine that obviously I'm a huge fan of. I take twice a day, every day. And alpha GPC that's actually in this formula, I'm a huge fan of as well. We've been doing research on it for several years, shown that it doubles your focus in acute use. So it increases acetylcholine, it increases phospholipids in the brain, like making the brain more neuroplastic. So those are two ingredients I'm a fan of. Peptide-wise, I love Semax, Semax. It's a nasal peptide. It's very experiential, very nootropic acutely, like where you'll feel the mental lift, like a sharpness.
It's for energy or?
Neurological, like cognitive resilience and focus. Especially there's an N-acetyl Semax that I'm the biggest fan of, but it's a nasal spray that you can do.
Where are you at overall with peptides? Because peptides is kind of the thing right now.
Huge fan of peptides, but again, you need to be aware of, like, one, the source that you're getting them from. Like, they might be a dirty source. Some people are stacking them too much in these vials where like there's these glow and clo blends and that have GHK, TB500, BPC, KPV, all of these things stacked, and they actually each require like different pHs, different environments to keep them stable. And so there's just a lot of stuff out on the market that I wouldn't necessarily trust. There's a handful of brands that I might trust, like Peptide Sciences is probably like one of the most trusted, probably the most expensive as well, but they're third-party tested and the quality is there.
And so what exactly are peptides, and why does it matter that they're stored in the right type of environments and packaged the right way? And then I know you can deliver them, like you can inject them, you can swallow them. Like, kind of walk me through, like, I mean, this is your whole world.
So peptides refers to just a protein. And typically this type of peptide is a bioregulatory peptide, which just means it's like a shorter chain peptide, typically like maybe 40 amino acids or less. And so the shorter the chain, the more fragile it is in terms of heat, light, even physical, like how
shaking,
physically,
stirring,
all that kind of stuff. Like, so, pH. So you have to be very careful. And certainly peptides, when you consume them orally, there's proteases, enzymes that break down proteins. So they're very fragile when it comes to that as soon as you cleave it at one of the amino acids, let's say there's 20 amino acids, and you cut it in half, now it's not going to have the same bioregulatory signal to the body. So typically, you're not orally ingesting these. There are a handful of them that can be orally ingested, but they're very long, very digestive resistant. And also another way to bypass this, sometimes, this only works in maybe like a third of the peptides, is they actually have to be very small to do this, is nasal sprays. But typically they need to be a subcutaneous injection.
Okay.
And that just means an insulin syringe. So that's different than intramuscular IM, which would be injecting like a bigger gauge needle into your muscle, like, you know, into your gluteus, your butt, or to your deltoid, your shoulder muscle. And certainly not like IV, which is, you know, directly into like intravenous, right?
Yep.
So this is just subcutaneous, where you pinch like a little bit of your belly fat. It's a little insulin syringe. It doesn't even feel like a bee sting. It's hardly anything. And when you get these vials, you have to hydrate them with bacteriostatic water, a particular type of water that's a saline. Like there's a little bit of salt in this water, and it's the right pH. And you hydrate this lyophilized powder, which like freeze-dried powder, and you slowly roll it, and then you're drawing it up with your syringe, and you're injecting them. Some of them are daily, some of them are 2 or 3 times a week, some of them are weekly. A lot of times these GLP-1s get thrown into the class of peptides. They're not really peptides.
GLP-1s are like the fat loss stuff going around.
Glucagon, like peptide 1, yeah, that's like slows down digestion, increases satiety, decreases appetite.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's like things like tirzepatide, semaglutide, retatrutide, these things that are getting pretty popular right now. People are having good results with.
And so most of peptides I need to inject, and you'd subcutaneous, so not into the muscle, not into the vein. With peptides, as a biochemist, is this safe to be doing? Is this experimental? My understanding is peptides are not they're not steroids, so you're not doing trenbolone, you're not doing something crazy like that. But are these safe to be consuming? Should the everyday person be consuming these? Do you want to consume them in cycles or ongoing indefinitely?
We're kind of the great experiment right now, but I will say that most of the peptides occur endogenously in the body. So these peptides are natural to the body. These are signals that are already happening in your body, like BPC-157 occurs, body protection compound, occurs naturally in the gut. And it's an anti-inflammatory healing signal that happens, that's released from the gut. So you're augmenting that signal. So it's different than, yes, providing some alternate exogenous outside of the body compound like trenbolone or decadurabolin or, you know, whatever it is.
Which are completely alien.
Right, exactly. They are, and they can have effect on certainly your physiology, obviously, like anabolic, androgenic. They can be enhance muscle mass, certainly.
But you'd say peptides, because, and again, like, forgive my lack of understanding of your expertise, but a peptide would be more similar to, like, you already have an air conditioner in your house. Now you're just putting Post-it notes or more thermometers throughout the house to control the air conditioner. And so it's like, hey, I can set the temperature differently, but the air conditioner already exists. It's just, I want more air or less air. I want more heat or less heat.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. Yes, it is exactly like amplifying the signal that already is there instead of creating a different signal that could be in some ways productive and in some ways counterproductive.
Gotcha.
For the most part, unless you're using these things at just massively supraphysiologic doses, they should be in concert with your body and potentially be training wheels to get like systems that have maybe gone offline for a while back online because of stress, inflammation, glycation, oxidation. Maybe quelling those will actually get natural systems back online.
That's fascinating. Okay, so personal curiosity as we kind of come to the end of this. On the spectrum of ordering Uber Eats, drinking White Monster and Diet Coke only, and that's all I'm doing for physical intake. I'm Uber Eats, White Monster, Diet Coke, to, let's say, steak, like all organic steak, Mountain Valley spring water, and some good vegetables, farm-raised eggs, to additional, like, I would say, like, this is pretty much like the general overall, like, health in America status is, like, fast food sent to my house with Diet Coke and White Monster, to, like, farm-raised, red meats, clean eggs, spring water only. But now we've, like, almost unlocked this new part of the spectrum, which is, like, red meats and all these other things, but also I'm injecting peptides and I'm drinking paraxanthine instead of caffeine. Walk me through kind of this new area of like essentially diet, of what happens if we stack all these things, and would you recommend, like, if you're eating Uber Eats and you're only drinking Diet Coke, maybe this isn't going to impact you at all.
For you.
Yeah,
you get those things. Like, first off, these things are very expensive and there's nuance to them, and you won't notice. It's like someone who is around, gunshots and toxic relationships and getting drunk every day and, using MDMA 8 times a month and, whatever. They're not going to notice ashwagandha. They're not in a nuanced enough space where they can, like, be tapped into their own physiology to say, like, oh, like, I noticed this 5% shift. Like, this is why people in those positions need, like, sledgehammers to notice anything. So that's not going to have much of an effect at that point. You need to get yourself out of toxicity, out of harm's way. Like, if you're playing in traffic, get the fuck out of the road.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk. Like, so that's where someone needs to get to before we're talking about peptides and supplements and all these things.
So when we get to the place of eating steak, getting sunlight every day, daily movement, etc., or roughly, I'm sure there's cheat meals and whatever, but for the most part, you're relatively healthy in your diet. What kind of things would you be adding on or recommending for most people? I mean, paraxanthine, different peptides, like, where would you be starting to expand into this diet?
Yeah, my top 5 would be like a multivitamin, like a really high-end one that's using organic minerals, methylated B vitamins, things like that you could probably get from like a Thorne or a Pure Encapsulations or something along those lines. A very high-end healthcare practitioner line product. These are certainly more expensive, but I'm all for getting the best version of something, adding that one thing, seeing how it affects you scientifically. And then if it works for you, keep it. And then let's add another thing instead of, like, shotgunning 20 things.
Right.
And especially when some of those things are on Amazon and 80% of them don't meet label claim, 20 to 30% have no active at all. 20% are counterfeit. So a fair amount of them have heavy metals and bacteria. And there's a lot of issues with just randomly buying things off of Amazon, and we know how manipulated the reviews can be. Yeah. The prices, I've seen many companies just put products on there to get reviews, to get purchasing, to become Amazon choice that are below cost. So think about, like, what that is. Like, chances are, if it's below cost, that there's probably no active at all in there.
So you should never be buying supplements on Amazon because of this.
Be careful about it. Like, I would, if you're going to buy on Amazon, buy from the first party, buy from a trusted brand that's been around 20, 30 years. If it's not the high-end healthcare practitioner lines like Thorne and Pure Encapsulations, at least buy like the Jarrow, the Now, the Puritan's Pride, or companies that have been around a long time and, like, have good quality control. Like, some of these brands that I've never heard of that are on, Amazon, like, think about that. Like, if it's a brand that didn't exist like 3 years ago and is Amazon only, there's some red flags there for me. And especially if they have proprietary blends. This is the other huge scam. Avoid proprietary blends like the plague. Proprietary blend is when you don't see full transparency, when you don't see the plant part, the species, the standardization of the extract, the dose. You're not seeing all that. You're just seeing like ginseng, ashwagandha, blah, 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 and one dose. That means that first ingredient in this whole proprietary blend, it's put in order of descending mass. That first ingredient could be 99.9% of that dose.
And there's just a
and
fleck
everything else is fairy dusted in.
And so that's been huge recently. Like, I know there's this guy, Togi. I don't know if you're familiar with Togi, that just created like a focus stack. And it seems legit and it seems interesting. And I know there's a bunch of people like white labeling supplement products now. We've got a bunch of 20-year-old guys that used to do drop shipping that are now creating supplement stacks. Do you think that there's any legitimacy to that? Is there a way that someone could, like, let's say I like Togi. I think he makes great content. I want to support
I don't know
Togi.
anything about him.
How do I verify if his supplements are something I should actually be?
Ask for third-party testing. There has to be lot testing and not just something from the contract manufacturer or the raw materials supplier, the people that are making the ingredients or the company that's putting it together. You're actually supposed to send it to a third-party lab after it's finished. So ask for those third-party lab testing results.
And you'll find that on their website usually, or
maybe not on their website, but if you reach out to them by email, like, you should be able to get those results. Or you call them, you should be able to get those results for sure. And if they, give you the runaround, that's probably a clear sign.
So you've got
beyond the multivitamin,
methylated B.
With the methylated B vitamins and the organic minerals. So like I said, that's a good place to start. That's foundational. I do like paraxanthine and alpha GPC nootropic wise, and the peptide, the nasal spray, Semax in particular, and acetyl Semax. If you're going to use a peptide, the one that you could stay on probably forever is BPC-157. It is the ultimate healing peptide, and it's truly like a fountain of youth. It really is. It's amazing. There's a lot of other peptides that I could go into, but cost-wise, they're far more expensive. There's a lot more nuance to them. BPC is very cheap, very reasonable to use, to stay on, and you will see the results. There's so many friends I've had that like literally foregone surgery because of BPC. Wow. And so it is powerful. You can stack it potentially with TB500, and there's other things that you can look into. Mitochondrial health, I think, is something that I've talked about quite a bit. That's your cellular powerhouse, creates ATP. That's the energy currency for your body. There's an antioxidant that's a mitochondrial antioxidant that I've worked on called ergothioneine that I believe in deeply. It comes from mushrooms, and it's really the power behind most mushrooms is ergothioneine. So that's one that I've been super dosing and feel incredible effects from. Taking 25, 50, 100 milligrams a day. Creatine, I believe in deeply. There's not just the muscle power and strength, but now we're seeing a lot of the neurological effects on depression, fertility, bone health, anti-cancer, sleep deprivation.
All on creatine.
Creatine is absolutely amazing. Take at least 3 grams a day, up to 20 grams a day. There's some really compelling data. Making sure you're getting enough protein. If you're not doing that through the diet, then supplementing with a protein powder. A bolus of at least, meaning like a large amount of at least 25 grams to 35 grams, like each time you eat, is kind of important to optimize for muscle protein synthesis and getting enough leucine, which is an amino acid that drives muscle protein synthesis, which I've worked on a peptide that I released that kind of one-ups leucine. It's called dileucine. It's a dipeptide of leucine and is 60% more effective than leucine itself at muscle protein synthesis. So you see more muscle gain, faster recovery, more muscle endurance, actually improved neuroplasticity, we're believing now. So dileucine would be an ingredient I would recommend. And on the flip side of dileucine and enough protein is anti-catabolic, meaning protecting muscle loss. And there's an ingredient that's a leucine metabolite called HMB. And that is a really powerful one. Getting 2 to 3 grams a couple times a day has been shown to be pretty profound at protecting muscle. Those are some of the most important ones. I also like this compound salidroside, which is the active from rhodiola, which is probably my favorite adaptogen. I'm not the biggest fan of ashwagandha, actually. I'm not the biggest fan of ginseng. Rhodiola, the Russian herb, seems to be the best at helping with cellular, physical, mental resilience. Just being a more resilient being, which means that I can have more ease when it's an uneasy situation, physically, mentally, spiritually. And so I think those compounds are pretty phenomenal. And salidroside is the active from rhodiola, and you can actually take the pure compound.
Interesting. And so all of these different compounds, like number one, the lifestyle stuff of like if you're living in a moldy environment or you're constantly around violence or those types of things, like maybe start there. And then all of these things, would you say don't even focus on these things until you're out of that environment? Or like paraxanthine, you might want to switch from drinking coffee every morning to drinking something like Update. Obviously being owner and Update is going to be something that of course you're going to advocate for, but where do you think these things kind of come into the lifestyle?
I think it's like titration, right? Like where you're kind of pulling yourself out of these situations. Like when I've told people, give paraxanthine like a 5-day full trial, like without caffeine. As people like might experience paraxanthine and not really understand just how clean it is if they're continuing to use caffeine every day and it's just kind of thrown in there in the mix somewhere. But if you get off caffeine and you get on paraxanthine for 5 straight days and have 0 caffeine for 5 straight days, watch what happens when you go back on caffeine. You'll feel just how dirty it is. And this is true, like as an example, as an analogy for everything in life. Like when you get out of that toxic environment, being an abusive person or mold or whatever,
you start to see how bad it is.
Yeah, and then you go back. Then you'll realize like, whoa, what was I doing there? Like now I see how bad it is. Now I see how much it was affecting me.
I love the advice of like leaving your childhood home or your childhood town, as when you grow up, it's like, hey, the first thing you should do is get out of that environment, go somewhere new, travel, move to a different city. And then if you go back, that's totally fine. You can go back and it'll give you, and you'll be more informed to go, oh, wow, I really don't like it here, or wow, I really do love it here. But you have that informed clarity versus just I'm being, thinking it's the best thing ever because you are ignorant to anything else.
Yeah, outside looking in. Like you can't read the label from inside the bottle.
100%. Shawn, this has been amazing. There are a couple questions I'd love to ask you to wrap up just around the business side of things. Obviously, you've been in this game for, 15, 20 years now. You've got a lot of credibility, but what kind of gave you your first ounce of success getting into supplementing and building these formulas?
Wow. It was, speaking of which, it was like the hustle. It was being, at my time, I was on message boards at bodybuilding.com and just working hard to get my rep up there and then starting to work with some small companies, writing white papers for them, like working on their message boards and responding for them and, helping them with sell sheets or whatever it was, going to the Arnold, the Olympia and working at their booths and just slowly working my way up to credibility. And so the first time I had a formulation come out on the internet was like a big deal. Like when I got to see like that's my product on the screen. And then an even bigger deal was when I was working with this company Dymatize and I was brought on as the director of R&D. It was up in Dallas when I saw my product in GNC. Like in a physical store. Yeah. And this is like akin to like, the musician when they hear their song on the radio or that kind of thing. Like, it's a freak out moment of like, oh, this is real. Like what I did is now in the world and people are consuming it. And, whether it's music or a supplement, they're consuming it. And there's something that's exciting and reaffirming about that of like, this isn't just a dream. This isn't like, you know, a someday, a maybe. Like, this is like a real physical thing that people can buy, and you know, you're watching people review it, and like wow, like, you know, someone reaches out to you with this picture of like, I'm taking your product, and there's power to that.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of power to that. And now
Yeah.
being, you know, as of this weekend in every single Walmart across the US, it's like, it's
Yeah.
almost this compound effect of like the first time you post on a message board and a brand responds, and then the first time you formulate a product for them, and then the first time it's in GNC, a single location, and then across a franchise. And it's just so interesting, like the compound effect of life when you just are willing to do the thing.
And that's important to notice those milestones.
For sure.
There was so many times early in my life that I was like, on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one, climbing that ladder, not looking back at that mountain and how far I've come.
Yeah, it's Dan Sullivan has this framework. He's the founder of Strategic Coach, where it's like the gap and the gain. And the gap is like how much farther I have to go, and the gain is how far I've already come. And it's like psychologically, you build a lot of momentum and a lot of courage when you look at how far you've already gone, and a lot of it can create a lot of doubt or insecurity if you're worried about how much farther you have to go. And so I know that obesity was a part of your journey early on, and fat loss, and you know, even just the milestones of like 250 to 240 to 225 to 210 to sub 200. It's like acknowledging those. One of the roommates is on a weight loss journey right now, and he just broke 200, and now he's
awesome.
underneath 200. And, you know, I'm sure he has different goals and there's more to come, but also what's a lot with more to gain? You know, he's already made it so far. And so we can celebrate that, and we can celebrate that in a way that isn't giving him a bunch of fatty food. It's like, hey, let's celebrate that. Yeah, let's celebrate that with a run. Let's celebrate that with some chicken breasts and some rice, which builds on the goal. And so I think it can be a really interesting and exciting journey. What was your made it moment? It was the GNC moment?
Maybe it was actually winning an award for the best product from bodybuilding.com, and it was a product I formulated, and just holding this award from, like, I was on these message boards as a no one, like there was post number 1, and you know, there's thousands of posts, and to just think about, I was just like this faceless blip on the electronic world of the internet, of just I'm this anonymous nobody trying to make a name for myself. And then years later, I'm getting an award from this company, getting acknowledged for how incredible this supplement is, and it was the best in class. Like, that's special. That was cool.
That's super special. Yeah. That's amazing.
Obviously, the same thing with biochemistry and formulation as with social media content and anything else in life. There's survivorship bias. And so we can look at you as this case study of excellence and exceptionalism within a career, within a path or an industry. And I'm sure there's 1,000 guys that we'll never know the names of, but we know Shawn Wells. And so out of curiosity, like, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you did well and you've worked hard and you've earned this place. And also I'm curious, like, what were kind of the threats coming up in this career that you got lucky enough that didn't take you out, or maybe you saw other people get taken down by certain things in the industry that you've been able to avoid?
My health, and I've seen people compensate, especially men in my arena, that are driven entrepreneurs that are wounded with their energy, that are seeking solace and pain relief from drugs, from sex, from alcohol, from thrills, from spending, you know, and fast cars and all the things, and just living like a reckless lifestyle that's moment to moment, to just try and soothe the pain. And when I look back at that, so much of that makes sense. And I see so many men, in particular men, but, you know, certainly women now too, that are pursuing, you know, big business and high accomplishment and high accolades, thinking that all their self-worth comes from that. Like, I used to believe that all of my self-worth came from achievement. I didn't realize that I could love myself, be loved for just being me. I mean, that took work in psychedelics, and I see so many people that are dying physically, mentally, that are not going to make it much longer, or are living a shell of a life, living moment to moment. And you're right, there's a lot of people that are not going to have my story. And I think that's where at some point, if you're on that hustle culture path, that at some point you need to acknowledge your health and say, this is not sustainable. Maybe for a period it is, but there's going to be some warning lights, some red flags, and like say, this is not sustainable. You need a different path now.
I have a belief in the life philosophy that the only constant in life is change and the only guarantee is death. I think this is like a really beautiful philosophy, and I don't know where it's come from. Maybe I'll take credit for it or someone else can. I'm sure someone will call me out for it, but I really do believe the only constant is change. And so then our only responsibility is to adapt and develop and improve. And so like, even speaking to you personally, like I'm someone that aspires to do good business and big business. And also, you know, I live in the house, as you've seen, and I drive a fast car, and I struggle with nicotine. And that's actually something I would love to talk to you about, nicotine and vaping, and what's your perspective on it. And I've also done a lot of, you know, men's work, and I have a very close relationship with God. I try to be very intentional across like breath work and meditation and just time of, I would really, really prefer not to be the billionaire that's obese, whose wife hates him or is already divorced and the kids don't even really know him. Like that would be, I think, worst outcome. I think ideal outcome is like be successful and also have a healthy life and not die at 75 from heart failure. Most heart attacks happen on Mondays at 8 in the morning, which is pretty funny. Across the week, it's the most common time for a heart attack. It's Monday in the morning. Wonder what that means. And so I'd like to have an integrated life. And so I'm doing a lot of work on it. And also, you know, I still drive a nice car, and I still chug on my little canned cherry flavored vape. Do you think those like, yeah, I mean, I would just love your opinion on the vape and like still having a shadow if it ever goes away. Because I think a lot of people can get into the personal development world of, oh, this lifestyle wasn't sustainable, so now I have to get rid of everything and be perfect and clean it all up.
No.
Right now I'm in a space where I'm like, I do a lot of work. I try to have this integrated life, and I vape. Boo-hoo, sue me. But I'm open to a new perspective.
No, I think, as you just said, like it's all about like change and over time, but it's also about like, one thing I've learned along the way is to grant yourself grace. Like if you're kind of humiliating and shaming yourself, like shoulding yourself like along the way, that's like so low vibration and like killing you. Like you could be doing all the healthy habits and you could be dying on the inside from shoulding.
I should
yourself.
do this, and I should do this, and I should do this.
Yeah, there's always more. There's always better. Just like there's always the better car, bigger house. There's always like the better meal, the
Faster
better
mile.
peptide, the better workout. I should have gotten 20 more minutes of sleep. Like whatever. It's like you can play that game all day long too.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to say like, hey, I love myself and I did a pretty good job today, and I'm curious, and I'm an explorer, and here's what I might try tomorrow because this was interesting data. Let's try this tomorrow and see how that works.